Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
So I found derivations of bro. There's Bro-BQ, a barbecue for bros only.
Yes.
Bro-Asis, the local bar or cafe that you like to go to with your bros. Or a bro-bituary, I guess, since the announcement of the passing of a fellow bro.
Bro-bituary. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Tech Talk. I'm Cody. He is Andy. It is the 8th of February, just about 4:30 in the afternoon Eastern Time, 3:30 Central. Andy, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
51 degrees here in Michigan. Beginning of February. Can't really complain.
It's pretty nice. Didn't you say you're getting a little bit of rain, though? Just a sprinkle?
Yeah, I just looked outside. It's starting to drizzle a little bit.
Well, how are you going to have a barbecue this tonight if it's raining?
It's going to be a tough ask. Hopefully everybody still comes through.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe instead of going outside, you guys can just go to your local Bro-Asis.
If it's raining, we might just have to go inside.
We might just have to go inside.
I think so.
You know, and
So.
I mean, did you get some silverware, by the way?
Well, not if we're going to go out to eat. It doesn't really matter. I don't need it anymore.
You don't need silverware. That's it. It's over. We don't do
Done.
silverware.
Done.
And that's okay.
But exciting news for today's episode. We got 3 trace requests.
3 trace. All came at request. That's
Means
big.
We're gaining speed.
Broad day. We're going to get to our 10,000 subscribers here in no time.
That's what I'm talking about.
Let's get
Love
this
it.
going. What do you want to do here?
All right.
We got Dec Fats. This came internally from Cole. Thanks, Cole. Appreciate it. He wanted to look at Dec Fats, just a general opinion. This one's interesting. I mean, you had this big downtrend that basically, we came out of it and have since been a nice steady uptrend all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this seems like a pretty sustainable uptrend considering that it's just been stair-stepping itself up. You don't have this like big unsustainable price action. But I'd say that the one thing that sticks out to me here, I guess the most, is you're starting to get somewhat of an ascending triangle. And for those that, just a little bit of a lesson here for what that is, an ascending triangle, basically where you have what the point of resistance that is a horizontal line that we keep bumping up against while continually putting in higher lows, right? And so the market bumps up against it, comes back down, but fails to put in a new low, bumps up against it again, fails to put in a new low. And you're coming to this inflection point, like right here.
What did we call this before? I think we said it was kind of winding up like a spring. Not necessarily this chart, but one that's happened before.
Yeah. But traditionally, this is a bullish chart. It's a bullish continuation, right? So you have the nice uptrend, right? You clearly broke out of this downtrend, solidified it, started to go. To see this ascending triangle start to take shape, you could get another couple of days that are kind of look like this, or like something like that, right? Where you keep bouncing up against this, this line of resistance, this horizontal line around 189.5, and then you get the close above that price, and then it's go time. I think that's what we're starting to see shape up here. These are nice continuation patterns. I think Cole asked about some of the secondary stuff, and he's not wrong. The RSI is definitely starting to tell us things may be getting a little bit overcooked. I'm not so sure. I don't know if you want to hang your hat on this one just yet. I think you got to come out of this and really start to trend lower.
Well, I was going to say, looking back into November, $1.90 was, there's a lot of resistance there.
Yeah. Well, we formed a gap after closing through that price.
Yep.
And then once again, it's certainly a point where the market doesn't like to sit still around, $1.90. So like I said, this is an interesting formation. I don't think I want to hang my hat on this RSI getting into overbought and coming back in because it really hasn't, if you just kind of dial it up here a little bit, it really hasn't solidified like this coming through, going back down, because it's just still bouncing around this area, right? We've seen that happen before where you get like these kind of false breakouts of those.
The RSI kind of looks like a W formation.
Could be. I think that's in jeopardy of being that. It's a good spot. But yeah, I think this is going to take precedence here. And if you start to look at some of the longer term stuff too, I mean, that doesn't look bearish.
No.
The weekly here, I mean, this is, if you look at the weekly, this RSI tells you that you still have plenty more to go.
Mm-hmm.
The monthly, yikes, tried to reject that, failed.
Monthly's even better.
But yeah, this daily, I think you could see another couple of days of consolidation before popping. Next one, though, longtime listener, longtime caller.
Friend of the program,
longtime friend of the program, Wisco Phil.
Wisco Phil.
Give it to us. I thought you were going to do your finger pistols after Wisco Phil.
I think Paige is putting that in there for RFX.
Everybody wants to see your finger pistols.
Oh,
You're,
see how hers
you're
are.
you're not. You don't do one finger. You do two, right? So like the
Dual.
barrel is the index in the middle.
Dual pistol. John Wick style.
John Wick. John Wick. All right. Anyways, Wisco Phil wanted to take a look. This looks pretty good. What do you think?
It looks good. And we had asked about it. I think we had talked about, at least I had mentioned, the fact of it looking a little bit bearish, because I think there was a point of a bear flag question on the chart. But after today, I don't think that bear flag is necessarily in the making.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm just drawing these. Each time we've tried to break, it's been a very slow stair step up, meaning like you just continually have these higher lows. I would also argue too that depending on where you want to draw this, right? So if you want to be a little bit more, again, I like to use the opens and closes for these. If you want to use the highs and the lows, the wicks, I would just tell you to just, speaking of John Wick, about that, just be more consistent. We'll use the wick since you mentioned John Wick. Either way, I mean, the more conservative approach in this case would be if you're looking for a bullish indicator, so to speak, right, or confirmation. Even using these wicks would tell you that we broke out of this downtrend, tried to come back into it, and failed to do so.
Right.
But
I think if we would have done the show yesterday, I would have argued for the fact that it kind of looked like a bear flag, just because it had tried to test up against 74 a few different times and could not do it. And then today, obviously, you got the confirmation of settling above, 76 and a half?
Sure. And like what sticks out to me here is this guy right there. It's a small hammer, but it's a hammer nonetheless.
Yeah, good point.
And then you get the confirmation with the open higher. That's dangerous right there, right? It's easy to say in hindsight, obviously, but that kind of stuff you start to see is a little bit, especially when you're failing to make a new low once here and then again here. And then you get some of the secondary stuff. I think this one's really important. Actually, it's stochastic here where it fast crossed the slow. That's usually when the blue basically crosses the red. We saw it here, right? The blue line crossed over the red. The blue line crossing that red is usually what you're looking for in terms of generating like some sort of a signal. In this case, it's a buy signal, right? When the blue line crosses from, low to high, basically, a little tennis lesson for you. When the blue line crosses from low to high, that's usually a buy signal. So this has got some room to go. You did it here on the momentum too, right? So the momentum crossed zero and is now moving away from that zero. And RSI will tell you that there's room still here before it's considered overbought. So this looks good. I mean, you got 3 secondary indicators telling you that this breakout of the downtrend is being confirmed.
So I'm hearing you correctly. You're not a seller of crude at this point.
I would not be a seller of crude at this time. Yes.
Okay.
I would go fill your gas tank up now because this may get a little bit more expensive.
Dicey. All right.
Dicey. I don't know. We'll see. But, Wisco Phil, we certainly appreciate the request. It's Phil in our office. Everybody knows him. And Cody, that gives Cody a chance to do his finger pistols too. You don't really get that many opportunities.
Yeah. Every time Phil I feel like every time Phil from now on has a request, it begs the.
Well, here's
we're excited, right? We're pumped.
Yeah. Well, no, of course it's exciting. Of course it's exciting. But here's what's going to really blow your mind. What's going to happen when Wisco Phil comes on the show? Are you going to be like?
That's how we get to 10,000 subscribers. We have people like that on the show that make it better.
Yes.
That's how we get there. Driving force.
Anyways, next. This one came from Iowa Dan. Brand new, first time request from Iowa Dan. Hopefully not the last.
All right.
And new. Iowa Dan, 10-year.
And so you might have to explain this because I even had to ask you.
I don't really fully understand it myself. There's a lot of discussion really about like interest rates.
Uh-huh.
For a while, I mean, money was pretty close to free. Not quite, but I guess let's talk about it from the sense of like your home dairy, right?
Yeah.
Operating lines, they're not fixed, obviously, right? I mean, you can speak to that way better than I can. What has increasing interest rates done to the average dairy farmer?
Even if you look back since right before COVID, you had a lot lower interest rate. And now in some places, depending on who you talk to, they've darn near tripled, right? Yeah. Kind of like the housing market where you can get a 3.2% interest rate in 2017 and 18. And now folks are staring down 8.5, 8.7%, depending on where you are and what you're lending against. But those are some massive jumps and massive numbers.
Right. And so, obviously that plays a significant role, not just in dairy, but I mean in everything. Right. And so like, what are rates doing? And this is a nice way to kind of to look at that. And you can look at the 30-year too, right? If you want to just go ZB, Just do that real fast. I mean, that's the 30-year, right? But let's look at the 10-year real fast. This is a tough one because, you could certainly argue, if I go back to the daily real fast, you could certainly argue that this move right here, and I'm just drawing just kind of a general line here, is like a wave 2.
You're looking
You know
at
what I
it
mean?
longer term.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. And you've gotten to a point where some of this, like this stochastic release, is a little bit oversold, but like the idea being that we went from 106 basically to 113, and over not the same time frame, but this has been a very, I don't know, sluggish retracement. I don't know what you want to call it. Like you're not really giving a whole lot back. So, and then if you look at like just the Fibonacci's of it, it's basically retraced about a third of that rally.
Correct.
So I think what would be a surprise to the market, maybe I'm not by any means an expert on interest rates. I don't know. That's it. Like I'm asking you about, the farm rate stuff because I don't.
The 10 rate chart, the higher, if I'm understanding it correctly, the higher that we go on this chart, the more interest rates increase then?
Should be. Yeah. I mean,
Should be
so
increasing.
like is this chart going to continue moving higher? And
Right.
I understand that we've had a bit of a setback, but you look at just the general trend of it, it has been up. And I think that is the concern of this chart potentially doing that.
Well, that's what I think. If you're talking about the second wave of a 5-wave Elliott theory here, that's what makes me nervous. Or just talking through it real quick, if we're at 8.5, 8%, let's call it, what does the fifth wave take us to?
Well,
12, 15?
I don't know. But if you were to make the argument that this is, in fact, what we're seeing, you take this, add call it 20%. Because again, remember, the third wave is usually the biggest, right? And we can just add it back onto here. I don't see why that's not possible. Right? Again, this is not that much of a retracement relative to this move. This is a nice, healthy uptrend, and it's seen a slight retracement. If it were to break out to the upside, I mean, you want to at least break that. You want to be a little more conservative with it. I mean, a new high would be, a clear breakout, right? So 113, some change.
Okay.
So either way, I mean, obviously, for a longest time, rates were not something that people really talked about because they were just, to your point, static.
Correct.
But now they're starting to, I ask it from the ag lending, what is cost or dairy and how has that impacted that business? You know what I mean? Like it's becoming something that's more of a line item, a bigger line.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. And if we start looking at it longer term, I think this right here is really interesting because you had this pretty long-term support. This is a weekly that got broken and then came right back. Like, is this a bear trap right here?
Right.
If so, you could make the argument that we got to go back and go test this number. Now you start talking about, well, why couldn't we do something like this, where you start talking about getting back into all this noise. I think that these two right here are entirely possible to go retrace some of that. The way this chart looks, and I think you're starting to see the makings of somewhat of a bear trap, right? Broke this major support and came right back into it, or came right back over it. So you think about the psychology of it. Some of these, if you were a seller in here, it's a longer term chart, obviously, right?
Right.
Change. But if you're a seller in here, you're now underwater after a significant break, right? You sell it after a significant break, breaks major support, and then comes right back out of it. That's not something that I'd want to be, staying short into, right?
Right.
So I think another thing to be mindful of too is this chart. If we see, again, you had a major downtrend that seems to have been broken, and you had the first sign of this support being tested, tried to break through and failed to do so. So coming back out of that, I think maybe the next step potentially, if anything, you could see somewhat of a consolidation. A consolidation would take us back. Remember, we looked at just where we're just looking at right now, the highs of that move. So if we start to get a consolidation after a big move, to see consolidation is usually prefacing a retracement of that move preceding it.
That makes sense.
So
yeah.
I think a really good example of that is corn.
Yep.
You had this big break. This consolidated for a long time now. I think it is what it is, right? But you had this big break. You have a consolidation, and an extended consolidation usually leads to the preceding move being retraced entirely. So I think we're getting ready to see something similar on this weekly chart. Big break, consolidate, come back up. I think that would be a big surprise to the market. We'll see.
So a lot to divulge.
First time, I think looking at 10-year and Iowa Dam put it in a request.
Dude, Shout out Iowa Dan. There's a lot to take in on this chart.
There's certainly a lot to take in this chart for sure. Mm.
There's a lot.
You might want to go get your rates locked in. You might want to go get your gas pumped. You might want to go get your burgers bought too.
Buy the burger, buy
your burgers. I don't know, because you're doing your barbecue tonight.
Got to get the meat from somewhere.
You want to go get your beef. How much more expensive that's going to be at your local Bro-Oasis. So, I don't know. We'll see.
All right. Well, good episode of Tech Talk today.
That was all requests.
I know. We appreciate your insights. We got a big shout out to Dan, Phil, and Cole. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We appreciate those three for sending us charts. Still trying to get to our 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. If we do, I was promised that we will get a pizza party for the company. So we are very excited about that. So if you could, be a friend, tell a friend, subscribe to the channel, send it to all your buddies. And until next time, next week, have a very safe and happy weekend.
Raising my hand, I have a question.
Oh, so it blanked out. I literally couldn't see you raise your hand. All of a sudden, it went.
I was raising my hand. I was just like,
all of a sudden, I seen your hand in front of your face. I'm like, what? I thought you were pointing to something on your thumb.
Mm-mm. Did I tell you though? Speaking of that, I was born in Michigan. I was born